A few days after this, Virginia and her curly-haired cavalry, which means soldier riding a horse, went out riding on broccoli meadows, which means grassy lawns, where she tore her habit means dress so badly in getting through a hedge that on the return home she made up her mind, which means was determined to go up by the back staircase so as not to be seen. As she was running past the tapestry chamber, the door of which happened to be opened, she faints, which means imaged. She saw some one inside and thinking it was her mother maids, whose who sometime used to bring her work there, looked in to ask her to mend her habit, to her immense, which means great, surprise. However, it was the Canterville ghost himself. He was sitting by the window, watching the ruined, which means destroyed gold of the yellowing trees fly through the air, and the red leaves dancing madly down the long avenue. His head was leaning on his hand, and his whole attitude was one of the extreme depression, which means sadness. Indeed, so forlorn, which means alone, and so much out of repair did he look, that little Virginia, whose first idea had been to run away and lock herself in her room, was filled with pity and determined to try and comfort him. So light was her football, and so deep his melancholy, which means sadness, that he was not aware of her presence till she spoke to him. I am so sorry for you, she said, but my brothers are going back to Eton tomorrow, and then if you behave yourself, no one will annoy you, which means make angry you. It was absurd, which means illogical, asking me to behave myself, he answered, looking round in astonishment at the pretty little girl who had ventured, which means to say something carefully, to address him. Quite absurd. I must rattle my chains and groan through keyholes and walk about at night. If that is what you mean, it is my only reason for existing. It is no reason at all for existing, and you know you have been very wicked, which means bad. Mrs. Umney told us the first day we arrived here that you had killed your wife. Well, I quite admit it, said the ghost, which previously, but it was a purely family matter and concerned no one else. It is very wrong to kill anyone, said Virginia, who at times had a sweet, which means a person strict about morals and seriousness, quote from some old New England youngster. Oh, I hate the cheap savagery, which means strictness of not concerned ethics. My wife was very plain, never had my frills properly stretched, and knew nothing about cookery. Why, there was a bunk I had slot in Hogley Woods, a magnificent picket, and do you know how she had it sent to table? However, it is no matter now, for it is all over, and I don't think it was very nice of her brothers to starve me to death. True, I did kill her. Starve you to death? Oh, Mr. Ghost. I mean, Sir Simon, are you hungry? I have a sandwich in my case. Would you like it? No, thank you. I never eat anything now, but it is very kind of you all the same, and you are much nicer than the rest of your horrid, rude, vulgar, dishonest family. Stop, cried Virginia, stamping her foot. It is you who are rude and horrid and vulgar, and as for dynasty, you know you stole the paints out of my box to try and furbish, which means renovated up the ridiculous blood stain in the library. First, you took all the reds and including the Valmirian, and I couldn't do any more sunsets. Then you took the emerald green and chrome yellow, and finally I had nothing left but indigo and Chinese white, and could only do moonlight scenes, which are always depressing to look at, and not at all easy to paint. I never told on you, though I was very much annoyed, and it was most ridiculous, the whole thing for who ever heard of emerald green blood. Well, really said the ghost, rather weakly. What was I to do? It is very difficult to think at red blood nowadays. As your brother began it all his paragon detergent, I certainly saw no reason why I should not have you paints. As for colors, that is always a matter of taste. The Canterville ghost have blue bloods. For instance, the very bluest in England, but I know you Americans don't care for things of this kind. You know nothing about it, and the best thing you can do is which means migrate and improve your mind. My father be only too happy to give you a free passage, and through there is a heavy duty on spirits of every kind. There will be no difficulty about the custom house, as the officers are all Democrats. Once in New York, you are sure to be a great success. I know lots of people there who would give $100,000 to have a grandfather, and much more than that to have a family host. I don't think I should like America. I suppose because we have no rains and no courtesies, and said Virginia secretly. No rains, no curiosity, answered the ghost. You have your navy and your manners. Good evening, I will go and ask Papa to get the twins on extra week's holiday. Please don't go, Miss Virginia, he cried. I am so lonely and so unhappy, and I really don't know what to do. I want to go sleep and I can't. That is quite absurd. You have merely to go to bed and blow out the candle. It is very difficult sometimes to keep awake, especially at church, but there is no difficulty at all about sleeping. Why, even babies know how to do that, and they are not very clever. I have not slept for 300 years, he said sadly. Virginia, beautiful blue eyes open in wonder. For 300 years, I have not slept. I am so tired. Virginia grew quite grave, and her little lips trembled like rosy lips. She came towards him, and kneeling down at his side, looked up into his old withered face. Poor ghost, she murmured. Have you no place where you can sleep? Far away beyond the pine woods, he answered in a low, dreamy voice. There is a little garden. There the grass grows long and deep. There are the great white stars of the hemlock, which means poison plant flower. There the nightingale sings all night longs, all night longs he sings. The cold crystal moons look down, and the yew tree spreads out his grain, which means big arms over the sleepers. Virginia's eyes grew dim with tears, and she hid her face in her hand. You mean the garden of death? She whispered. Yes, that must be so beautiful to lie in the soft brown earth, with the grasses waving about one's head, and listen to silence. To have no yesterday and no tomorrow, to forget time, to forget life, to be at peace. You can help me, you can open for me the portals, which means gates of death house. For love is always with you, and love is stronger than death is. Virginia trembled, a cold shudder trembled with fear ran through her, and for a few moments there was silence. She felt as if she was in a terrible dream. Then the ghost spoke again, and his voice sounded like the sighing of the wind. Have you ever read the old forfetti, which means prediction, foretelling, on the library window? Oh, often, cried the little girl, looking up. I know it was quite well. It is painted in curious black letters, and it difficult to read. There are only 6 lines. These lines are: when a golden girl can win prayer from out the lips of sin, when the barren almost bears, and a little child gives away its tear, then shall all the house be still, and peace come to Canterville. But I don't know what they mean. They mean, he said sadly, that you must whip me for the sins, because I have no tear, and pray with me for my soul, because I have no faith. And then, if you have always been sweet and good and gentle, the angel of death will have mercy on me. You will see fearful shapes in the darkness, and wicked voices will whisper in your ears, but they will not harm you. For against the purity of a little child, the power of hell can't prevail. Virginia made no answer. The ghost wrung his hand in wild despair as he looked down at her bow golden head. Suddenly she stood up, were very pale, and with a strange light in her eyes. I am not afraid, she said firmly. I will ask the angel to have mercy on you. He roses from his seat and faint cry of joy, and taking her hand bent over it with old-fashioned grace and kissed it. His fingers were as cold as ice, and his love burnt like fire. But Virginia didn't flutter, which means stop, as he led her across the dusky room. On the faded green pattern made by waving wool on heavy fabric were broidered like little huntsmen. They blew their bundle of thread tied together at one end horns, and with their tiny hands waved to her go to bed. Go back, little Virginia, they cried. Go back. But the ghost clutched her hand more tightly, and she shut her eyes against them. Horrible animal with lizard entrails, and Google's eyes blinked at her from the canyon chimney piece and murmured, be aware, little Virginia, be aware. We may never see you again. But the ghost giggled on more swiftly. Virginia didn't listen. When they reached the end of the room, he stopped and murmured some word she couldn't understand. She opened her eyes, saw the wall slowly fading away like a mist, and a great black cave in front of her. A bitter cold wind swept round them, and she felt something pulling at her dress. Quick, quick, cried the ghost, or it will be too late. And in a moment, the wainscoting has closed behind them, and the trapezity chamber was empty.